Problem with all these people, they don't understand the left. They really don't. This is not kind of Adlai Stevenson, naive liberal left. This is a hardcore Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders, AOC, socialist, Jacobin, angry party. 54% in one poll wouldn't be unhappy if Donald Trump was killed. That's who they are.
Hello and welcome to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. This is our Friday news roundup, and there's lots of news on the agenda, tariffs, and especially China we're going to look at today. And then Trump also had talks with Netanyahu this week. Those will be our first stories, so stay with us and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. Victor is the Martin and Neely Anderson Senior Fellow in Military History at the Hoover Institution and the Wayne and Marcia Buskey Distinguished Fellow in History at Hillsdale College. You can find him at his website, victorhanson.com. Please come join us there. It is called The Blade of Perseus, and we will probably read a comment later, and so I'll talk about the website later. So, Victor, I would hate to be at the gambling table with Trump, because even though we kind of know what's in their hands, we don't know everything. And he is a tough player and has raised the Chinese tariffs, because they've threatened to retaliate against him, to 104%. And then today I heard it's up to 125%. And I was wondering your reflections on China.
Well, he did something very smart by, first of all, as he raised, they countered and said, we're going to raise tariffs on you. So then he countered and went up. Then they countered. At the same time he did that, the flat 10%, he put a 90-day hold on for most countries, because there are 70 of them want to negotiate. So what he's saying to China is, you go ahead and do that, but I've got Europe and Japan and South Korea and Vietnam and all these other countries that I can deal with, and we're going to zero or parity tariffs. And I'm not even going to press on this first round. And we had discussed this on the other shows. I had suggested that for round two, he not get into the VAT tax, which I understand is a form of a tariff. He not get into the pseudo health and security. Like I gave one example. You dip your chickens in chlorine, therefore we're not going to buy them. All of that fuddy-duddy stuff they use in lieu of the word tariff. But he can do that in the second round. The main thing right now is he shows Wall Street and the Europeans that we are heading in a zero or parity tariff. And China knows that. So he's got the more that he can get a concession, all he needs is a couple of big players, a Japan or South Korea, to make a deal to go down and reduce their surpluses. As soon as he does that, there will be a scramble to get into the market, musical chair style. Nobody wants to be without a chair with a music, and China is going to be the big loser. The other thing to remember about China very quickly is they have nearly a $400 billion surplus. Nobody ever wins a trade war that has a surplus. They have 400. And so morally and ethically, people look at that and they say, why are you running a $400 billion deficit with the United States? Why don't you run 150 billion and, even things out? So they know that. Number two, they have a lot more liability. You know how many students are in America right now? It used to be in China about 10,000. It's not even that anymore. There's nearly 300,000 Chinese students. And why are they here? Besides to enrich these universities with full tuition, full room and board, they're here the vast majority are in STEM. They're in mathematics, they're in engineering, they're in the sciences, and they're here for one reason, to bring back technology and expertise to China, because their system does not engender or create spontaneous scientific success, progress at the same rate as ours does. If you don't have 300,000 Chinese students here, and you cannot steal copyright patents from the United States, eventually you will begin to fall. By that I mean you will not keep up with the F-35, or you will not keep up with SpaceX. You can't do it. And they know that. So the third thing is they have about 400,000 acres. We have about 4% of California American farmland. They were way down and they're starting to inch up. They're buying 300,000 or 400,000 acres in strategic places. We essentially own no farmland in China. So all Trump has to do is say, well, let's look at the whole relationship. I suggest, and it's a twofer, because he tells Columbia and Cornell and Stanford, you know what? You guys have been denying the First Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. You use racially illegal biases on your hiring and admissions. But you know what? And I'm going to tax your endowment, but I'm not going to let any Chinese students come in. How's that? And that would be a big hit to them. It would be welcomed by most people. 1% are considered to be active espionage agents. That's 3,000 of them. So he's got a lot of levers to play with China. China has no goodwill in the United States after COVID and all the lies in the Wuhan lab. So they're going to wake up. My only worry about this China is, if they start to see that they're going to lose the American market and they're cutting deals with their rivals like South Korea and Australia and Japan and Taiwan, whom they loathe, and they think they're getting in here and China's not. And number two, if they think the United States is going to deny their students here, they might move on Taiwan. And if they did not move on Taiwan, even if they were successful, they would ruin their entire international reputation. They would have the whole world shun them, much more than they're doing to Russia. And then we would be far closer to Russia and try to find an alliance of belligerents and neutrals and NATO to him. So I don't see them in a good position, especially when you look at some of the 3 or 4 criteria that we talked about that are the stuff of civilizations. Their fertility rate is almost 1. They're shrinking and aging. They have only about a third of the oil production and gas of we do. So they got 4 times the population, but they only have a third of the energy that we do. Our agriculture, in terms of value, is about twice what theirs is. So the stuff of civilization, energy, food, fertility, and then an environment of creativity and encouragement of entrepreneurs, they don't have it. That's why they're predatory and they're scavenging the American economy.
Related to this, and maybe just peripherally, we recently had this week, Elon Musk put out a tweet that Peter Navarro was a sack of bricks, like a sack of bricks, because he said that, I think this is the thing Elon didn't like, that the Vietnam offer of no tariffs was not of any value to the United States. And so I was wondering.
Here's the problem. Peter Navarro was way back as a University of California at Irvine economics professor. He's been hitting tariffs. Okay. So Elon personally is getting killed on his stock price. Not that he's getting killed, it's only getting back to where it was 3 or 4 years ago. But the Europeans are going after him, and certain states are going after him. And then we have this terrorist campaign to intimidate Tesla owners that has resulted in a 13% drop in purchases. So he's concerned about this. Navarro is an academic. That's why he said you've never created anything. And he is advising, they don't disagree about the need for tariffs. But what Elon is saying, and I tend to agree with him, is for the first round, to stop the stock market. And by the way, when Trump said he's going to have 70 nations in active negotiations, and that's going to take 90 days to create these deals, and in that 90-day window, he will not have the blanket 10%, the stock market went up. I'm speaking at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. The stock market has gone up over 2,200 points. It's the highest in a single day rise in 4 years. And it's recovered much of what it's lost. And it's going to have a panic and reverse. If he sees, all we need is one big player to say, I come clean. I want to be a better partner with the United States. I don't have a problem with having no surpluses. Japan, a Taiwan, a South Korea, a Germany, a EU in general. And when that happens, all these frenzied, hysterical stock people, the proverbial 10% that own 93% of the market capitalization, they're going to say, wow, I got to get in there and get these prices. They're a historic low. I think this market could go up to 50,000. As far as the final thing on the Navarro, and he was very brave. I mean, they put him in jail for refusing a subpoena. And I mean, are they going to do that to Merrick Garland? He did too, without any consequences. But I think where he's wrong is, Elon is saying there's so much tension and it's so fragile. Let's get the 70 nations here and let's just focus on tariffs. And we know that if you say 0 tariffs with Vietnam, or 0 tariffs with Germany, or 0 tariffs with Italy, they do things like excise tax, or they say this is a dangerous pharmaceutical, or this type of machinery doesn't have enough safety components on it, or this toy could be swallowed. That's what they do. And they hike their regulations far. And so Navarro is saying, let's do it all right now. And even at times he's saying, well, what do we do about the last 50 years? It's almost like reparations, you know. So he doesn't, and then he sees them as revenue producers because he's got another agenda that they want to lower taxes on tips, Social Security, first responders, military personnel. So he sees revenue not just as parity, but also as a big money earner that would substitute, as it was in the United States before 1916, for income taxes. That's a mistake right now. What he needs to do is parity, symmetry, get down to 0. That's what Elon wants. And then say, round 2, you come back, and now we have to negotiate all of these insidious Machiavelli machinations that you guys do. And so I think that Elon's going to win that. You know, I don't think he needs to disparage him in the public square, but that's Elon.
Yeah. That's Elon, a little bit unpredictable and mercurial. All right, Victor, let's turn then to the illegal immigration. Trump has a great proposal in my eyes that he's going to fine illegal immigrants up to $1,000 a day if they stay here. And so I don't know how legal that is or what he's going to do.
That's a 1996 law. It's legal. But the problem is that law was passed when you had very few illegal aliens coming in, maybe a couple million, not when you have 30 million. So remember, all this stuff is based on iterations, cohorts. He's looking to address the 12 million right now. And he's going after first the 500,000 that are criminals. Then he's going to go after the 1.5 million that have already been served deportation orders and they just blew it off. Then he's going to go with the people who have only been, the Biden people. They haven't been here more than 4 years. That will start to get tricky. Some of them have married. They're not citizens, but they've married. Some of them are not on welfare of any sort. Some of them are working. Some of them haven't committed any crimes. And he's going to have to adjudicate those on how long they resided. Once you handle the 12 million, then you've got 20 plus million. These are the people who have been here anywhere from more than 4 years to 30 years. And a lot of them have not committed crimes. A lot of them are working. A lot of them have long tenures here. A lot of them haven't seen Mexico since they were 2 or 3. So there has to be a pathway to some. And I think out of the 30 million, it might be half who say, I've never committed a crime. I'm working as a carpenter. I'm working for the government even. I am not on food stamps. I don't have Section 8 housing. I don't have any of that. And I've been here 12 years, something like that. And you have to offer them not citizenship, a pathway and a fine. Won't be, you can imagine if they charged them $950 a day for thousands of days they've been here. But you could say to them, you pay a $950, $1,000 fine, and we will give you a green card if you meet those criteria. Where this will get controversial, there will be illegal aliens who are here for 10 years, let's say. And let's say one guy is a plumber's apprentice, right? And let's say 9 years ago he had a DUI. And let's say that 4 years ago he got an EBT card. And so then you say, well, you can get a green card if you've been here 10 years, 5 years. You decide what. You have no criminal record, you're not on public support, and you're fully employed. And that guy says, but it was just a DUI. It was just either a low felony or a high misdemeanor, and I haven't had one since. And everybody has EBT cards. I don't get steady, and then you're going to get the whole left to come out. Oh, look at this person, Joe Blow. He was such a nice person, and they argue. Well, he entered illegally. He's been here illegally. He's not. And this is one reason why they want to use the IRS, because they have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of these people that are here illegally, that are working, are not paying income tax. And that's another reason why the left does not want that record exposed, because they not only know that there's a lot of people who are getting paid in cash and do not pay income tax, but a lot of them are registering to vote as well, as we learned from Elon.
Well, since you're there, one of the heads of the IRS has decided to quit, Melanie Krause, because she doesn't want to give up information to DHS.
Poor baby. All these people have selective morality. So she gave some little soapbox performance art speech. I'm resigning because the initiatives that Donald Trump is enacting will have permanent and irreparable damage to the IRS. You know what the permanent and irreparable damage is? It's things like Lois Lerner selectively denying tax-free status to particular groups that might galvanize and hurt Obama's reelection, and then lying about it, taking the Fifth Amendment, or the IRS looking at Hunter Biden and having two devoted IRS auditors say this guy has not paid his taxes and it's a huge amount, and then having some federal attorneys say these people are crazy, they're nutty, and dismissing it except for the judge that, and then it didn't matter anyway, he was pardoned. So the IRS has nothing, she knows the IRS has been politicized, and everybody knows that.
Well, Victor, let's take a break, and then we'll come back to talk a little bit about the meeting between Bibi Netanyahu and Trump this week. Stay with us, and we'll be right back.
We'll be right back to our show in just a moment, but first, an important message for anyone concerned about their financial future. Have you seen the headlines? The Department of Government Efficiency has uncovered a staggering $115 billion in government fraud, with investigators suggesting this is just the tip of the iceberg. Financial analysts are now confirming what many suspected: the previous administration's economic success was largely artificial, propped up by funneling trillions through NGOs and creating an economic mirage. As this corruption is exposed, experts predict we're heading toward a short but deep recession when this false economic support evaporates. What does this mean for your retirement savings? Throughout history, when governments manipulate economies and currencies collapse, physical gold has been mankind's most reliable store of value. Shouldn't you consider protecting part of your retirement with an asset that governments can't create with keystrokes or devalue through corruption? American Alternative Assets is offering a free wealth protection guide to help safeguard your financial future from the coming economic correction. Call 833-2-USA-GOLD or visit VictorLovesGold.com today for your free wealth guide, and learn why now may be the perfect time to add precious metals to your portfolio. That's 833-287-2465 or VictorLovesGold.com. Protect what you've earned before the fraud economy collapses completely.
Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. So, Victor, I noticed two things because Trump gave a press conference with Bibi Netanyahu, and the things that I noticed were kind of peripheral, the very serious issues with the Middle East in general. And the first thing was that Trump said, we are having direct talks with Iran, and sitting there with Bibi Netanyahu sort of saying the United States is going to deal with this on its own and not necessarily link themselves to Israel in these talks. And I was wondering your thoughts on that.
Netanyahu appreciates Trump because he's not Biden and he's not putting ceasefires and taking the Hamas line and all that stuff. And the Biden administration was full in USAID of pro-Hamas people, and the universities are pro-Hamas. But their trajectories are in the same direction. Denuclearize Iran, emasculate the Houthis, Hamas, and Hezbollah, and get Saudi Gulf money in to redevelop Gaza without Hamas. Okay, but they're not exactly the same, they're parallel. So Netanyahu would want the United States to take care of nuclear, the Iran nuclear mountain, I guess it is. And in fact, Trump is bringing, I don't know what he's got, 6 or 7 B-1 bombers that can carry this 30,000-pound munition. And he's letting everybody see it. They're not in underground bunkers. And then we've got 2 carrier groups that are going to assemble. So he's ratcheting up the pressure. But he would rather, for the economy and the oil markets and especially his MAGA agenda. You saw that exchange during Signal where J.D. Vance voiced, he said, I don't think this is in the interest of the president's supporters to have a attack on the Houthis. But it wasn't a preemptive, it was a reactive attack. It was like the first term Soleimani or Baghdadi, etc. So Netanyahu would rather see Iran out of the way, and he knows he can't do it unless he has access to the type of aircraft and munitions that only we have. And Trump doesn't want him to get in the way. The problem that Trump is going to have is his offer to Iran is, we're not going to try to overthrow your government. We're not going to try to stir up 40% of your country that are ethnic minorities that hate you. We're not going to unleash Israel on you. And we're not going to take out your nuclear facilities if you stop stirring up Islamic radicalism, trying to overthrow the Gulf sheikdoms, trying to stop commerce in the Red Sea with the Houthis, trying to revive Hezbollah. You were behind Hamas. You just stop that. And they're not going to stop it. Because without that, they have nothing. They're just a corrupt theocracy that their own people despise. And so I think this will be like the Obama, he's got a lot more clout and threats, credible. But ultimately, they're not going to negotiate because they're not going to negotiate themselves into the end because they're terrorists. And they understand that the only way they're in power, they threaten people with their terror. They've tried to kill Trump. Their agents have. So I would assume that this is going to go on and on and on. And then he's going to be trying to solve certain things first. He would like to get a ceasefire in Ukraine. And he would like to deal finally with the trade tariff in China. And at that point, 3 or 4 or 5 months from now, he's going to have to either cut off and ratchet up the oil embargo, maximum pressure, or he's going to have to take out the nuclear mountain. He has the ability to do both.
But you sound like Trump's interest is not to necessarily worry about nuclear ability, but it's definitely Bibi Netanyahu's probably first worry.
He said they can't have a nuclear, because he knows what they're going to do. They're going to start threatening Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. The Gulf countries have some Shia minorities. Go back to what the Obama administration envisioned as a counterweight in the Middle East, a Shia Persian underdog who finally gets social justice. And they can do that with a nuclear weapon. And once they do a nuclear weapon, then Saudis say, we're going to get one, and they have the money to buy it or create it. And then Kuwaitis say yes, and Jordanians and Egyptians, Turks, everybody will get one. And so it's not in our interest that they have any. It's just a matter of Trump thinks he can squeeze them and offer them incentives without violating the MAGA charter of no optional Middle East wars. And Netanyahu was saying, everybody's been down that road. It does not work. These are evil people. They planned basically October 7th, or their surrogates did. They deny it, but they really did. You can't talk to these people. And they don't have any air defenses now. We in one little raid, we got rid of all their air defenses. We got rid of their appendages. We made Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis combat ineffective. So you have a window right now that you'll never have it again. So what you need to do is one morning wake up and send about 150 fighter aircraft, fighter bombers, and take out their military their ability to resist militarily, their air defenses such as they are that are left, and we'll help you. We'll give you everywhere where they are. And then you've got to send these bombers with these 30,000-pound munitions and just hit this for a week and blow all of their nuclear facilities up. And Trump is saying, and the stock market will go down, and the oil price will go sky high, and my MAGA people will say you're starting a war, and we don't know what will happen. We don't know what if they have a nuclear weapon on one missile, and they use that in reserve, and then that goes into Israel. Then I'll get blamed for destroying the Jewish state. So he's got all these concerns, and they're legitimate.
Well, the second thing on that conference with the Bibi Netanyahu was that Trump was friendly toward Turkey and Erdogan. And so I was kind of wondering, I know there's a lot of tension between Israel and Turkey, and so why bring that up in this particular conference with Bibi Netanyahu, the friendly sort of...
Erdogan and Netanyahu hate each other's guts. Erdogan hates Israel. He was the one that said during the post-October 7th, Israel incursions that one day the Israelis would wake up and they'd see Turkish missiles coming down upon them. He says that to everybody. He said that to the Greeks. He said that to Cypriots. There's a difference now, and that is Turkey has upped its reputation by double dealing in the Ukraine and Russian border war by selling kind of sophisticated but cheap and durable and practicable drones and weaponry to both sides. At the same time, Israel has upped its reputation by doing what everybody said was impossible. You can't take on Hezbollah. You'll never find Nasrallah. These people are not Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. These are shock troops. These are the Uruk-hai of Sauron. And you can't get rid of them. And he did. And then they said, you don't dare go into Iranian airspace. And he did. So Israel's stock has risen. So is Turkey's. And now they've got a void because Bashar Assad is in Russia and the Assad dynasty has collapsed. And Syria is a open ground with no government. So Turkey is going in there and carving out border areas, and so is Israel. And those border areas are starting to expand. You want to know if there's going to be I don't think there's going to be another Syria under its old borders. I think you're going to have this former Al-Qaeda government carve out a central place around Damascus, and then Israel's going to get security border zones, and then Turkey's going to do. And so they're both the most powerful countries in the Middle East. And Turkey feels it's a neo-Ottoman regime. It feels it wants to reassert its control over the Middle East, which it enjoyed for centuries until World War I. And he's that fanatic and crazy. And so they're going to butt heads, and Trump is trying to get them to not fight each other, to get along. I don't know how viable Turkey's going to be as a NATO power. It wants now 30 F-35 deliveries and participation in the assemblage return. We didn't trust them because they bought Russian anti-aircraft systems. They're very anti-American. The regime they're Islamicist. They've destroyed the opposition. They're not a democracy. They're the only non-democracy in NATO. On the other hand, the Europeans, who are so principled, we don't like 1 million Uyghur slave laborers, but let's not pick on China. And we don't like what the Turkish government is doing to the Kurds. And we don't like what they're doing to the opposition, but they have the largest land force and army in NATO. So let's rely on them and not us for military power in extremis.
Do you think this makes the Greek nation and Israel closer friends because of the nature of their relationship to Turkey? Each one seems
the Greek
very...
nation?
Yeah, the
Yes.
Greeks and Israel are very tight with each other.
Absolutely. They have so much in common. They're Western, and they share a shared Judeo-Christian heritage. They're both small, vulnerable countries Greece is 10 million people, and it's got a huge 50,000. It has a huge area for the small size of its territory. They've had deals before that one of the stupidest thing of many stupid things the Biden administration, I shouldn't even say Biden, I'm sorry everybody, the wax and effigies handlers did was cancel the Med pipeline deal where Cyprus, Greece, and Israel had developed a mechanism to tap Mediterranean natural gas and send it into Italy and replace Russian. I hope they can do it now. Turkey's tried to disrupt it. And the United States has said, don't get involved. But Greece has a lot, and they're both very close friends now with the United States. When I lived in Greece for over almost 3 years off and on, they were very hostile to the United States. They had the PASOK socialist government. But now I think we have some F-16s that temporarily based there. Turkey's very angry at us that we're too close to the Greeks. I admit a prejudice right here that I love Greece. I love Greek people. I've been there 20 or 30 times. It's a wonderful country. We should be there close as possible, and let's bygones be bygones. Forget about the Papadopoulos and Ioannidis dictatorships of the 1970s. I think Israel will be very close they both have a common worry, and that's Ottomanism and Turkey.
So, Victor, let's then turn to, I know that you and Jack talked about the Supreme Court's opinion on Judge Boasberg, but I was wondering, you didn't really talk so much about the fact that Amy Coney Barrett has voted against not stopping Judge Boasberg.
Yes,
Yeah.
She says that you cannot use that. And the Supreme Court, if you read the ruling, said they have no problem that a person who is being deported has a right to question the legality of it. But they just said they can't agree on where that should take place, that adjudication. And so the majority, 5, said, if you came here illegally and you're residing illegally and you claim that you're not a gang member, or you're not Trin, or even if you were Trin and you want to adjudicate that under our legal system, the very fact that you didn't ask our permission to be here, and the very fact that you're not asking our permission to reside here illegally, means that you've broken a number of our laws. So under this Alien Act, we're sending you back home. And then when you're back home, just get your legal representatives in the United States to make the case that it was a mistake, or that you have a constitutional right as an illegal alien to come back. That's all the Supreme Court is basically saying. And Amy Barrett said no. She joined, and this is the second time she's done it. So Supreme Court justices are humans. They're sensitive that every time they make a ruling, they're going to be criticized. And they live in Washington, D.C., which is 93% a Democratic. So they will be ostracized. Somebody like Clarence Thomas or Sam, they don't care. And after what they did to Kavanaugh, he doesn't care. Gorsuch probably cares a little bit more, but he's even more conservative. So they've got 4 hardcore, predictable, reliable, originalist traditionalists. And then there's John Roberts, and he cares about what he envisions as the reputation of the court, that it has to be above suspicion so that it has an equal branch. And he's got a lot of problems because he's got these appellate court, these district court and circuit courts that are freelancing and doing things they know they shouldn't, i.e. some guy in Kansas or some guy in California says the whole country's his jurisdiction. So, but then they've got Brown and Kagan and Sotomayor, and these are not traditionalists. They believe that it's a living constitution, and they're smarter than the founders, and they're going to make up law depending on what the left says is fair and just and humane. And then you've got Barrett, and she is on the one hand a conservative and was trained as a conservative and taught as a conservative. On the other hand, she has a lot of social and cultural Catholic concerns. I guess you'd call it Catholic. If Jack's not here, I can't consult him on Catholic orthodoxy, but I call her a Catholic humanist. Not quite to the point of the Pope or something, but she's influenced by that Catholic humanist tradition. And so she obviously has empathies. In the same way that Sandra Day O'Connell said that she was going to uphold affirmative action because she said in 20 years it'll be over with anyway. Well, if it is over, it's not because of the left. Problem with all these people, they don't understand the left. They really don't. This is not kind of Adlai Stevenson, naive liberal left. This is a hardcore Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders, AOC, socialist, Jacobin, angry party. 54% in one poll wouldn't be unhappy if Donald Trump was killed. That's who they are.
Victor, let's go ahead and take a break, and then we'll come back to talk a little bit about the policy with universities by Trump. Stay with us, and we'll be back. Welcome back to the Victor Davis Hanson Show. So Victor, Trump has, I just remind your audience, you can find Victor at X. His handle is @VD and on Facebook, Hanson's Morning Cup. You can also find him on YouTube for video versions of this podcast, as well as Rumble and Spotify. So please come join us at any of those outlets. So Trump has frozen now, so he's really ramping up his unhappiness with the university's anti-Semitism and racial discrimination. But can I just say how much? He is freezing federal funds to Northwestern University and Cornell to the tune of $790 million for Northwestern and $1 billion for Cornell. And so your thoughts?
I think people confuse what he's doing. He is saying that if you look at forget the Supreme Court's little tweak here, they've never been clear about it. But the 64, 65, and subsequent Civil Rights Acts say that you cannot use race to discriminate somebody in hiring, retention, or promotion, or admission. That's just the way the law is. And they didn't even get that specific. And then courts try to tweak it. Trump is saying that his legal team says the statutes of the civil rights legislation are in the books. So he looks at these universities and he said, why do they have graduations separated by race? Why do they have dorms separated by race? I know they get around it with theme. I'll say this is an auxiliary. I get email and they'll say, Victor, you said that they have graduations separated by race, but these are auxiliary graduation. Are they not graduation ceremonies? And then they'll say, then these are not dorms, they're theme houses. So you get the picture, but he's basically saying if Stanford University, to take my university, puts on their website the last 3.5 years that they let in 9% of their student body, about 180 people, were white males. And that group is about 33% of the population, right? So do they really believe that white males, in terms of aptitude or test scores or GPA or whatever they are less qualified than other ethnic groups? No. And so he's saying to all these people, you violate the First Amendment when you shout speakers down and you don't allow them to speak. You violate probably the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. I think I said third about quartering troops. I don't know if they do that or not. I imagine they would if they could. But they've got all the amendments that concern the rights of the accused and evidence. So when Joe Smith is at Stanford and he goes on a date and he and his date get drunk and it's he said, she said, and she files a complaint and said, I was sexually attacked by my boyfriend. And he says, no, you weren't. We got drunk and we had a consensual sexual relationship and I just didn't want to see you afterwards. In other words, he was a rogue and a cad, but not that doesn't matter. They will not say, both of you come before a tribunal and you can have legal counsel. They will be prejudiced against the male. And they won't give him the full array of constitutional protections of cross-examination, naming his accuser, etc. It will not be run by a legal proceeding. So all of those issues, and then these universities are systematically allowing people to be harassing Jewish students. anti-Semitism. So all of these together, they're saying to them, they're not trying to punish them. They're just saying, we're going to pass on federal funds to you. Sorry. We support this, and we support this, and we support this, and then you take it. But you don't, I think they've been bragging about their endowments. People have said to them, I think Barack Obama said that. He said, well, you have a $15 billion endowment. Use it. Meaning, just tell the federal government to blank itself, that you can do whatever you want. Be like Hillsdale College. If you really are committed to your principles, as Hillsdale is, then don't take the federal money. Unfortunately for them, there's some other things coming down the tube that they're not going to like. It's not just that they can only charge the government. I shouldn't say charge. They can only rip off the government 15%. They used to do 54, 60% on federal grants, mostly from the NIH. They're going to get a tax on the endowment. I don't know how much. It's going to be geared probably to the number of students versus the endowment. That's going to hurt them. And then there's going to be stuff coming in on the student loan program. And once we get all the stuff cleared out, you'd hear talk that the Senate and the House, if they can survive the midterms or right before the midterms, they're going to go to the university and say, you know what, you're going to have some skin in the game, and we're going to have to redefine moral hazard so that if you want to let all these students come in and you're only graduating them every 6 years and 50% of them drop out anyway, and you have all these studies majors that no one's employable, you're going to have to start telling people what major gives you what job at what price, and give them some more information. But more importantly, you're going to have to pledge a percentage of your endowment to back up their loan. We're not going to do it all anymore because 33% are late, and they're going to be late on your dime, not ours. If they were wise, they would just look at their budget and say, I'm going to get rid of the Center for Therapeutic Counseling. I'm going to get rid of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion czar in the physics department. I'm going to get rid of the Green Change Initiative. I'm going to get rid of the Disinformation and Misinformation Internet Laboratory or Observer, all that stuff.
I don't see that happening, though, Victor. With these are very left-wing. Even their administrations are very left-wing. They're going to try to protect all of that stuff all they can.
That's why they have to move very quickly, why they have 4 or 5 votes in the House and 4 votes in the Senate. If they really stick together, they can do it. But a lot of it can be done by executive order, too, or to quote Barack Obama. Well, I don't care what the Congress does. I got a phone, I got a pen. I got a phone, I got a pen. I'm going to sign an executive order. That's what he did. He set the precedent of the plethora of orders. Until then, people hadn't done it nearly as much.
Another thing this week that we're seeing, and probably for lots of weeks leading up till now, is that all the violent rhetoric that you and Jack have talked about, lots of news shows have talked about. But there was an interesting article in the New York Post by Carol Markowitz, and it was called Silence is Violence. And she made the point that the leadership of the Democrats are silent on all of these outbursts that are violent, and they are guilty themselves of the violence that is because of that they need to speak out. And I think she's
right. They will
right.
not speak out because they enjoy it. So when Jasmine Crockett talks about hitting Cruz in the head, or they call Trump a Nazi or a fascist, or they say that Elon has to be taken down, or Walt says he's an A blank, and Senator Mark Kelly goes after him, and then these people are here in Clovis, 20 miles from here. They just caught a guy puncturing the tire of some poor woman's Tesla. First of all, these people are really stupid. They don't understand the security system in a Tesla. And number 2, they all seem to fit a paradigm. Every time I see them, they're the ex-hippies I knew at UC Santa Cruz. This guy was a 76-year-old middle-class white guy. And it's almost as if all those people that I was Mr. Country Bumpkin Yokel. I go up from the farm and I see these people. And the first thing I ever saw was everybody was sleeping around. Everybody was using drugs. They had drugs on their door of the Santa Cruz dorms with price tags, psilocybin, LSD, this. And then they were all going out and screaming and yelling and calling their professors you and disrupting. And I thought, when my dad dropped me off, they had a big protest, 71. And he said, this is not good. Who are these people? He said, I'm going to be gone, but you're going to have to deal with these people. And I said, I think they're all going to be hippies. You know what he said? Oh, no. I know these people. They're going to be the stockbrokers. They're going to be the media people. They're going to be the lawyer. They're going to run the country. This is just a passion, a temporary little play game they do. And then he got in, of course, to World War II. He said, we were flying over Kobe, we were flying over Yokohama, and these people were the people who were telling us what to do and they never set foot out of the United States. So, yeah, when I saw that profile of that guy and I look at all these things, the left, though, gave us a hint. They said on January 6th, we don't care if you went into the Capitol, we don't care anything if you were in the general vicinity. If you touched a barrier, we're going to charge. They charged 950 people. There weren't that many people in the Capitol. There were people that didn't have anything to do with and they put them in jail for 4 or 5 months. And they did it, as the French said, to discourage the others. That was the point.
Yes, but 950, they're wasting the people's time by doing that.
That was the point. But they wanted to be so outrageous and excessive. But my point is, if they really believed, and I think it did work, that everybody was paranoid even for a legitimate, and they do the same thing with anti-abortion protests. Why don't they use the left for the Tesla people and just say, you know what? We have warned everybody, do not try to vandalize, firebomb, do any of this. And you keep doing it. And this is federal racketeering across state lines because they all have the same signs, they have the same printout instructions. They all leave at noon for their unionized protest lunch, and just tell them. Pam Bondi said the other day, we're going to go after 20 years for anybody that's caught doing this. And then I hope that they can find that these people are being coordinated by people high up in the Democratic Party. Democratic Party what they're doing is really encouraging violence. You'd think that Cory Booker, when he did his 25-hour Spartacus talk, he would say, I'm very worried. We had the Scalise shooting we had a Bernie Sanders campaign worker tried to knock off Republican legislators. We had this Mr. Crooks guy that was mouthing all this left-wing crap. We had this other idiot that was in Florida. Now we learned that he wanted to get an anti-aircraft missile or a bazooka or something.
That was Ryan Ruth.
Yeah. And then we had the Iranians that were sending teams to shoot Trump. And then we've got people issuing threats. We've got Green shaking his cane, trying to disrupt the Congress. We've got the videos where they're punching at people. Just stop this, because this is beyond Trump as a Hitler, he's Mussolini. You're going to you're lowering the bar of what is permissible. And somebody out there is going to say, as I said before, I can take this guy, I can shoot Elon, or I can shoot Trump, and I will be recognized as an iconic hero. And then when you look at these polls where they ask people, would you be upset if Donald Trump? No, 54% of these people. And it's not the same, everybody. Everybody say, well, what I get really angry is somebody says on television, or people I know in academia, or people write me that I've known and liked for years, and they go, Victor, aren't you concerned about the deepening civil violence maybe, or the rudeness and all, we're just tearing each other apart. Can't we have harmony? Aren't you worried that yeah, I'm worried, and I know who does 90% of it. I'm not saying that January 6th was a picnic, but compared to the 4 months of 2020 when they rioted and burned and killed and maimed and $2 billion damage and 14,000 people arrested and let go, basically, it's the left doing this. When they had the boycott of Mulvaney, remember that?
Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah. Did people go around and try to vandalize Budweiser truck? I don't remember that.
I don't know.
I do not remember that.
They boycotted the product. That's what.
When people didn't go see Snow White, I don't think that they went threw eggs at Disney Park or Disney World. or Disneyland. They don't do that. These people do. And they need to be held accountable for, or something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, their leaders seem to be happy to entertain it, though, and I think that's what Markowitz's point is that that's problematic.
When you have Chuck Schumer saying, "Hey, we got all these people going into Republican districts, and they're demonstrating they're going to make it impossible," and then he said, "Hey, Gorsuch, hey, Kavanaugh, you reap the wind. You're going to sow the whirlwind. You don't know what's going to hit you." And then people show up at their houses, and Merrick Garland does nothing, even when an assassin showed up. If anybody had showed up at Ketanji Brown's house or Kagan's house and threatened them, and then some Republican senator had gone to the Supreme Court and said, "You don't know," they would have been probably charged with a crime.
Well, Victor, we're at the end of our show, so I wanted to read a comment you had on your Ultra. And Ultra is for our subscribers, and you can subscribe to Victor at victorhanson.com. And again, the name of the website is The Blade of Perseus. And we have subscriptions, yeah.
Everybody gets basically 2 essays that can't be found anywhere behind the paywall, 700 or 800 words on different things, and then I do a 8 to 10 minute video for the Ultra subscribers.
Yeah, and that video last week was on the Wall Street Journal, and that it has turned left of center at best, I think. Those are my words. I hope that represents how you feel.
I read, you remember I read the headlines?
Yeah. And there were lots of people who echoed this sentiment, but this is one comment from a listener. "Hello, Professor Hanson," and this is from James Watnam. "Great piece, and I totally concur. Yet just today, I read Carlo Versano's editorial in Newsweek. He's their political editor. He said even though the Wall Street Journal exists only to exists only to shine Trump's shoes, unquote. Trump's tariffs have put the Wall Street Journal into meltdown mode. A bit ironic, to say the least. I believe that we as Americans will need to be patient and with the tariffs. Time will tell whether this trade war will be successful or not. But from the reports I'm seeing, farmers and fishermen, shrimpers in Louisiana, for example, will be seeing a net gain from the tariffs. Thanks for all that you do. Much appreciated from Milwaukee." And like I said, he didn't say he had dropped his Wall Street Journal subscription, but there were a lot of them that did.
Well, we had Jim Cramer saying this is going to be Black Monday like the 1929. Here we are on a Wednesday in the market. I haven't checked in the last hour, but it's, up 6% in a single day, the highest in 4 days. Who knows what it'll be. But once that news gets out, as we said at the beginning, that 70 nations are not going to have to be punished for 90 days, and they're sending teams over to negotiate unique deals. And all Trump has to show is that the trade deficit will go from 1 trillion to $500 billion. That is amazing. Or that the tariffs will be symmetrical, or there'll be no tariffs. And then when people hark and say, Peter Navarro says, well, there's all these other things, we can do that with round 2, all of the stealthy ways they cheat. But right now, the key is that I want to say it's Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. He's really good. He's calm. He never gets excited. He calms people down. He's knowledgeable. I've never seen him once say, "I don't know what you're talking about," or "I don't know. I'll Jen Psaki back to you." He never does that. And he's been a voice that's sober and reassuring to people. And I think the Wall Street people in the Wall Street Journal are going to look back at how they participated in this hysteria, and it's going to be, some of us are going to remind them forever that you people were like the Russian collusion, the laptop disinformation to get him off the de-ballot movement, the Alpha Ping Bank, the 5 criminal and civil lawfare suits, the Kamala Harris surge that said that the Iowa Des Moines Register shows her winning the election 3 points ahead. All of that misinformation is what you're doing, because you're not taking a deep breath and saying, oil prices look good, inflation rate looks good, job report looks great record the first term. The world around is calming down. Great progress on the border and illegal migration. Repeal of Biden's war on coal, natural gas, oil, all these good things have deregulation on the horizon, lower taxes. No, I've lost this and I'm going crazy. That's what they are. Just to remind the Wall Street Journal, again, I'm not a socialist by any means. I'm a very conservative person, but I watched every small farm in this area go broke. I'm looking out now west and now south, east, south, west, and north. And what do I see? I see a childhood and when there was 40, 80, 100-acre farms. The woman usually, but not always, did all the bookkeeping. She was the person who disciplined everything, kept the operation going, and the farmer was out working, and the children were working, and they all participated in Shriners, Masons, Rotary, Elks, the kids' Little League, Hospital Auxiliary. That was what happened. And that was completely wiped out under globalization because we let in a bunch of cheap food from the EU, and then we decided that vertical integration was the only way to survive, and the big got huge. Never in my life did I know anybody that owned 10,000 acres. I probably know 50 of them now. I do not know one person, one family that is farming 40 to 60 acres in my vicinity, and that's how they're living. I don't know one. Everybody I know went broke. And I tell you, Mr. Wall Street Journal, it's not just creative destruction. I know 3 people who committed suicide during the period. I knew what happened to my family was torn apart. I know my neighbors' families were torn apart. I know people just left. So when you talk about your 5 or 6% market correction, take a deep breath, Wall Street Journal, and say, the market doubled from 2017 to 2025, doubled in that 8-year period. Wages only went up about 30%. And that was lucky. They hadn't gone up at all until Trump came in for 12 years. But what if your wages had gone up 30, what if your stock returns had gone up 30% and their wages had gone up 100%, doubled? What would your attitude be by now? So what I'm trying to tell you very politely is half the country who has 1% of the market value, of the capitalization value of Wall Street, they don't care about your psychodramas. They care about the inflation rate. They care about the jobless rate. They care about the price of gas. You don't. Maybe in the abstract you're saying, yes, I do, Victor, but it's all academic with them. They never really say, this can bring a lot of jobs, $3-4 trillion investment. This is great. Shutting down the border will mean that a guy in Fowler or Reedley doesn't have to wait in line for his dialysis. A mother might be saved from a criminal, one of the 500,000 criminals float. They don't talk about that. That's what gets me so angry about it. I don't understand. They're so different than Fox News online. You know, the two. They're both earned by the Murdoch family. It's almost as if James Murdoch is doing Lachlan is doing Fox News and Fox website, and his left-wing brother is doing the Wall Street Journal. Because I look at the names of some of the reporters some of them have a long history of being hard leftist. It doesn't make sense. And I would just ask for a little, I haven't seen an op-ed. And the op-ed writers are pretty good, but it's the news. I haven't seen a reporter that the article is, I'm interviewing somebody and he says this could work, we need to take a deep breath and see what's going on. Instead, it's doom and gloom and gloom and doom and doom, 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 gloom, gloom, nonstop. They're going to go the way of the National Review. I know that everybody says, oh, Victor, National Review is just tiddlywinks compared to the Wall Street. No, the Wall Street Journal is not liked by the left. It's not liked by the left. And if it goes New York Times, the people who read it and support it will do to it what they did to the National Review. And the National Review, I won't get into it because I have a personal history there, but the National Review's revenue, subscribers, readership now in 2025 compared to when I joined in 2001, it's night and day, night and day.
They need to give Trump's national protection policies, protecting the nation first, i.e. his tariffs, a chance. They just really need to give them a chance, and they're not
They
doing
need to
that.
put it in a context. They need to say, we were worried about, of course, the stock market, but we were very happy that somebody finally told the Houthis they're not going to destroy the Red Sea. It's critical, and Trump did that. And we are very happy that Iran has been emasculated, and we're very happy that the oil price has gone down and he's allowing people to explore and he's reviving clean coal. We're very happy about that, and we're very happy that he's, for the first person in 3 years, is trying to find an equitable ceasefire in Ukraine and stop that Verdun, Somme, Stalingrad. And we're very happy that whatever we felt before about our libertarian ideas of an open border, it's better for the United States to have legal-only immigration and not have 12 million people coming across. And whatever he's doing with the universities, it was unsustainable to have 400,000 foreign students with no idea what they're doing, and some of them are leading anti-Semitic violent protests while they're supposed to be. Just say that, and then balance it. On the other hand, we don't agree, but no, it's just and they are doing more to drive down the price, and then they complain about the price. It's almost as if the left and these venues are telling the Europeans and the Japanese, just hold on, wait Trump out. We are causing so much anguish and panic that he will have to fold because he can't take the pressure, and then you'll get your way. Because often they're very sympathetic, and they can't answer one question, and that is, if it is so horrible to have tariffs, why don't you criticize the Japanese, EU, Taiwanese economy? Why don't you say, well, why don't you just give up? It's great. We have a great deficit. Why don't you just run surpluses with everybody but yourself and get a big deficit? Deficits are great because they've told us again and again they either don't matter or they're advantageous. Well, they might be advantageous if you have the world's reserve currency like we do, and you can manipulate things, but most countries don't, and we don't have complete control over it either sometimes. So it's not a good thing. And yet most countries, if you read, I read the Wall Street Journal the other day, and I thought to myself, and I'm going to end this round and this episode, but I thought, wow, I didn't know that everybody who is advising the German government, the French government, the Japanese, all the academics, all the PhDs they have, all the corporate magnates, all the experienced treasury secretaries, finance ministers, they're all stupid because it's been a policy of the EU to ensure you have a $200 million surplus. Of Japan, you keep it over $100 million. India, same. Canada, 63, Mexico, they're all stupid. They should read the Wall Street Journal. Deficits don't matter. They could expand their economy by just destroying every tariff they have and welcoming in the United States to run maybe a $300 billion surplus. Why don't they do it? Why don't they read the Wall Street Journal? That's their attitude.
I agree, but they would tell you, for example, like India, that well, we have a economy that is not servicing our population, and we don't live at the same standard of living level as the United States.
Our GDP is running at 2%. India's went up 5%. How is that possible when they have a big surplus and they have tariffs? And how about the Chinese? They have a 6% GDP growth and a $400 billion surplus with us. That can't be possible. Somebody writes me these, I get all these, I'm getting very sensitive, obviously, these emails they write and said, good old Vic in the great days of the 70s. And I'm thinking, with all due respect, you're an idiot. In the 70s, we didn't have this technology of labor-saving devices. Of course, we're going to have progress. But I remember the 70s. I can guarantee you that if I walked anywhere in this vicinity and I dropped my wallet, then and now I'd have a better chance of having somebody return it. And in the 1970s, when I used to walk with my grandfather and irrigate, I didn't find bodies in the orchard, and I didn't find somebody coming in with a U-Haul and throwing stuff, puppies out on, dead cats. And when I didn't know what the word M13 meant, I didn't know what Norteños meant, I didn't know what Serene, I never heard of Trent. So, and I knew hundreds of families where there was one person working and the family was supported, and there was a nuclear family. So yes, they didn't have the money and the economy was not globalized. I get that. There wasn't a 7 billion person market, but there was a lot of family stability and culture and tradition. It's just the way it was. And then I won't even get into the school system. I was in Salma High School and I was 15 years old in a rural high school that was supposed to be one of the weakest. And we were having discussions about Shakespeare's Julius Caesar in our English class. There it is.
Yeah, there it is. And an interesting question. Why would it be that the United States can provide so much better living for their own citizens when, for example, India cannot, and they have such a huge poverty
I don't
problem?
understand. I've met 5 or 6 or 7 good friends of mine that are entrepreneurs, corporate, really wonderful people, and they all tell me the same thing. They invested in China, and then they had to have a partnership with the Chinese, and they had to have these rules with the Chinese, and then the Chinese basically did 2 things. They copied all of their product, and then they learned how the management team created the product, and then they broke their contract and expropriated it and said, sue us. And they would never do it again. And people should ask themselves about the Wuhan lab and 1 million Americans who died from I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but they covered up that leak, and they could have helped the world by telling us the dangers immediately. And they didn't have to corrupt the WHO, and they don't have any business buying 400,000 acres of farmland around our strategic area. And we don't need 300,000 Chinese nationals studying engineering, computer technology, et cetera, in our universities, just because these corrupt universities want to get, make them pay 105, make their governments pay 105, 110% so they can give fellowships to other people. We have a lot of leverage, boy. We have a lot of leverage with the Chinese that goes way beyond trade. It's about students, it's about buying, it's about investment, it's about everything. We can do a lot of damage. I don't want to get in an argument with them.
It's about real estate, too. Lots of real estate.
They're building ships at 250 times we are. They're producing 5 nukes a month. But right now, at this particular moment, when you look at 11 carrier groups and you look at every single one of our submarines is nuclear, theirs are not. When you look at the capabilities of an F-22 or an F-35 versus their planes, when you look at, do they have a bomber comparable of our bomb? No. We have about 8 times more nuclear weapons than they do. We're more sophisticated, even at our nadir and at their ascendance. So for a time, we have a lot more allies, and they overplay their hand. They thought they were going to go into Panama and just take it over and then threaten us. And now the Panamanians are basically asking us, make sure you've got our back because we want to get rid of these people. And they're trying to welch on that deal where they sold to BlackRock the entry and the exit. And so if I was China, I would cut a deal very quickly because they don't have any understanding of the vulnerabilities they have and the animosity that they have incurred by the American people.
And with that, Victor, we'll finish our Friday News Roundup. Thank you for listening. And this is Sammy Wink and Victor Davis Hanson, and we're signing off.
Thanks for listening and viewing.